Okay, Clyde, we are good to go.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Clyde Henry, Chair of the HR. I am calling this meeting to order at 4:01 p.m., May 21st, 2020. Welcome to the history-making first virtual meeting of the HRC. Because of our time restrictions and the number of applications, we have approximately 5 minutes and 20 seconds for each. I will swear in owners or their representatives before their application is presented, and they will be given an opportunity to speak after it is presented. I will ask that if you do speak, that your comments are necessary for the commissioners to understand your project. However, don't feel obligated to repeat what has already been presented. I also ask the commissioners to be aware of the time element in their comments and to make a motion as soon as they feel comfortable doing so, or to call for a continuation as soon as it is apparent that a resolution will not be reached at this meeting. Next month, we are planning a virtual meeting, business meeting, where more time for in-depth discussion will be available. Should I lose my Wi-Fi connection, I appoint Stuart Caboni to take over as chair. The next commission monthly business meeting will be at noon, Thursday, June 11th, 2020, and that will also be online. The next commission hearing will be 4 p.m., June 18th, 2020, will also be online. We are now going to introduce the staff and swear them in. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission? This evening, please respond by first stating your name, position, and then followed by I do.
Connie Torbeck, Assistant Historic Preservation Officer with the City of Columbus. I do.
Amy Goodman, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Columbus. I do.
Thank you. Now have each commissioner introduce themselves in alphabetic order. We will start with Ms. Barnett, or Batten, I mean. Jackie?
Oh, I'm Jackie Barton.
Stuart, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Stuart Gibney. Hi, can you hear me?
Joseph McCabe.
Joseph McCabe.
And Aaron.
I'm here, Aaron Prosser.
Great. And I am Clyde Henry. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for February 20, 2020. Do I hear a motion? I'm sorry, Aaron, did you move?
That was Jackie.
It was Jackie? Okay. Did you remember?
Second the motion.
Yeah, say your name before you make the motion. And seconded. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll call the question. All votes tonight are going to be a roll call vote, and we are going to randomly vary the roll call so that the same person doesn't have to be first every time.
Aye.
Stuart?
Aye.
Joseph?
Yes, aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Prosser, are you there?
Did you hear me? Yes.
Okay. And the chair votes yes also. Motion carries. Uh, Next item on the agenda is the approval of the staff approval. There are 10 items. They are listed on pages 6 through 9 of the agenda. Do I hear a motion on that?
Aaron Prosser, Clyde, a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Joseph McCabe, second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the items? Hearing none, we will call for a vote. Stewart.
Aye.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye. Here, aye.
And the chair also, aye. There's no public forum items, so we will move to the applications for certification of appropriateness, starting with item number 1. 1478 Bryden Road. And I understand the owner is here this evening. Will the owner please turn on your mic? Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do. Elaine Brill, I do. Elaine Brill, Paris.
Thank you. Connie, do you want to?
Yes, this is for the removal of a slate roof and installation of a new asphalt shingle roof. Sufficient photos have been submitted to convey the overall deteriorated condition of the slate roof, and there are currently active leaks. We also have an assessment from the roofer that was in your packet materials. So I would recommend approval of the application to install new Owens Corning standard 3-tab state rating.
Thank you. Does the Paris, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's the original roof from 100 years ago. So
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions by any of the commissioners? Will someone make a motion?
Chair Henry, Joseph McCabe here, making a motion that in the case of HR-20-05-011-1478 Bryden Road, a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you.
Second by Stuart Gibney.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Second by Stuart Gibney.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
no.
We'll call for a vote. Joseph,
Aye.
Aaron,
Yes.
Jackie,
Aye.
Jackie, I didn't hear you.
That's a yes.
Stuart,
Yes.
and the chair also votes yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda
Thank you.
is, welcome. Next item on the agenda is 100 Arcadia Avenue. I believe that we have Mark Green attending this evening. So turn on your mic.
Yes, that's correct.
Mike or Mark Green, do you swear in your testimony this evening to tell the truth to the commission?
I do.
And please state your name.
Mark Green, Director of Design for Maroos Brothers Construction.
Thank you. Connie, will you present the project?
Yes, this is phase 2 of an ongoing rehabilitation project of 100 Arcadia Avenue, which is the North High School. In general, it's a lot of exterior work, walkways, features, and so forth. All proposed work is well documented and consistent with applicable code and guidelines. The outdoor bleachers that will be removed are not historic. I would recommend approval as submitted.
Thank you. Mark, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, sir.
Thank you. Commissioners, anyone have or discussion points? Do I hear a motion?
Clyde, it's Jackie.
Yes.
The one thing I did notice that was changing is that there were some brick pavers and walks that were going to be turned to concrete. I don't have a particular issue with that. I just wanted to make sure, I just wanted to call the question that there wasn't any particular significance to those brick walkways, that those weren't any particular age or significance, that was just a design feature. I thought maybe the applicant could clarify that for us, or Connie could.
Mark, can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. The pavers that are there are not original, and they're not historic. And they're taking them out just because of the trip hazard for the kids. It's deteriorated over time, and concrete was the safer way to go, but they are not historic.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Joseph McCabe will make a motion in the case of HR-20-05-014, 100 Arcadia Avenue, to move to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Aaron Prosser. Clyde, I'll second.
Thank you. We'll call the question. Aaron?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Stuart?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes also. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 667 Linwood Avenue. And I believe the owner is here. Is that correct?
I do not believe we have someone here for this application.
Okay.
I have not received response to my email. You may remember this was on the February agenda, and the applicant did not attend at that time. This is a current open code order for constructing a dormer without approval.
Okay.
If you take a look at your staff report, I think I have been communicating with the applicant, and I think either the commission could approve this with the owner to work with staff to get the final details that would be appropriate, or just remove it from the agenda. This would remain a code order for code enforcement.
Yeah, it's a little disturbing that this is the second time that they have not participated. Commissioners, does anybody have particular feelings on whether we should try to continue this, or whether we should simply?
Joseph McCabe here. Just my only statement would be maybe in the light of the COVID crisis, this being our first digital meeting, I would be amenable to continuing one additional time here to give the applicant one last chance in the spirit of cooperation to the fullest extent.
Okay.
Yep.
Would someone make a motion to that effect?
Sure. Jackie Barton, motion to continue agenda item HR 20-02-008 for 667 Linwood Avenue.
Is there a second?
Joseph McCabe, second.
All those in favor, or I'm sorry, the motion's been made and seconded. No further discussion. We'll move to the vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Stuart,
Aye.
and the chair also votes on it. The motion carries. We're up to agenda item number 4, 565 East Town Street. And I believe that we have a representative here. Is that correct? Craig, Moncrief, or is there?
Yes, aye.
Okay, please, see, do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do.
Please state your name.
Craig Moncrief from Plank Law Firm.
Thank you. Connie, would you like to present the project?
This is for installation.
Uh,
If you are not, please mute your microphones.
I think it was Joe.
Okay, can you try again? Connie?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So this was for the installation of 3 heat pumps on the exterior of the property, which you can see the heat pumps there, and also the pipes that are covered with a PVC covering. They were installed prior to approval, but since the application was submitted, I found out that there was some miscoordination, I guess. An application was submitted to us on March 2nd, prior to the schedule of the March 18th hearing. A mechanical permit was issued and the equipment was installed March 17th. So photos of the installed equipment have been submitted, which you can see that there are 3 different places where they were installed. One unit is located towards the front of the property, which is the one that's on the screen right now, but it's somewhat screened by a tree. I think because, excuse me, because there was some misunderstanding with the building department, the mechanical inspectors, they weren't aware that they needed to hold the permit until a certificate of appropriateness was issued. I would recommend that these be approved as installed, but that the PVC cover should be painted a color to match the brick, or else replaced with PVC covers that match the brick better. And I think this is something that I actually discussed with the property owner a couple of months ago before we started working. That's it.
Thank you. Representative, want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Connie. I would just ask that that everyone consider waiving the condition just on the fact that out of the 3 units, only 1 is even remotely visible from Town Street, and also it fits in with the area. There's two properties, one directly across the street, one behind it, that have similar style drops with that don't exactly match the brick. So I would just ask that the owner's allowed to leave them as is.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Commissioners, any questions?
This is Aaron Proctor. I understand the issue with the building department and kind of getting wires crossed, but we still have a obligation to the guidelines, correct? Like at the minimum, needing them to fade back into the brick a little bit more seems completely reasonable to me.
Any other commissioners? Would somebody like to put that in a motion?
Stuart Givney. I move that HR 20 03 006, application for 565 East Town Street, including 3 heat pump units to be considered as installed with the addition of modifying the conduit covering to blend into the brick.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Barton, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just one last thing, Clyde. Do we want to make sure that staff approves the color they select to blend into the brick?
Yeah, Stuart, is that to add to your motion?
Sure, that's fine.
Staff approval of the color. Okay, is that okay with the second?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
None.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the vote. Stuart? Aaron?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Joseph? I didn't hear you, Joseph.
He needs to be unmuted.
There you go.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes on that also. Motion carries. We're down to agenda item 5.
Thank you.
530 East Rich Street. And I believe this is a conceptual review. And we have several people here this evening representing the owners. Would you all unmute yourselves? And Eric, why don't you start? Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening? And then starting with Aaron, and then Jamie, say your name, or say I do, and then your name, please. Eric, are you there? Okay, Mike, are you there? Jamie, are you there?
Mike Shannon.
Okay. You swear to tell the truth before in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do.
Okay. Do you know if Eric or Jamie are online?
Jamie and Joe Sullivan should be on.
I see Jamie.
It's Randy Black. I'm here as well.
And Randy Black, I'm sorry.
I'm here as well.
Okay. Randy, do you also swear? Okay. And who else was the other one?
Joe Sullivan.
Joe. Do you also swear?
I do. I do.
Thank you. Connie, will you present the project?
So this is for proposed demolition of portions of the rear sections of both houses and the connector between the 2 houses, and demolition of the concrete block addition and the 2 garages. The proposed demolition has been reviewed and generally agreed upon by the commission during review of a previously proposed project. Then there would also be a renovation of the 2 historic houses and construction of a new rear addition, which would include 30 dwelling units and 30 parking spaces. And on the back of your staff report, applicable guidelines have been provided regarding appropriate heights scale, roof shape, compatibility with adjacent structures, which all need to be considered for this plan. And this is conceptual.
Sorry, I got to unmute. Any representatives care to say anything more?
We're really excited in our new scheme. It's been quite a while since we've met, and this is drastically different than what you saw before this year. We really dug into the issues with the other project. Look at this for us. Based on some other projects he had been working on with us. After several meetings with Joe, we opted to make this change in direction. We feel this is a far better solution for the property and the area, and we're really excited to hear your comments and feedback as we move through this process.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any feedback on it? Okay, I'll kind of go down the list. Joseph, you have any feedback on this?
No, not at this time. It would be good to see maybe a little bit more. I mean, I guess from the street view, I think it's pretty obvious what happens here in the disconnection of the houses. Just want to make sure it's compatible with any structures along the rear sides of the alleys, the secondary and tertiary elevations. If we have street views similar to what we're seeing now on the screen, just in their content of working with everything. I'm encouraging sort of designs that sort of fade away behind historic structures. I think they've done an okay job of achieving everything in compatibility and level of details consistent with a lot of buildings around it.
Thank you. Jackie, do you want to make any comments?
I was processing that it was a very it's very different than what we first received as the presentation was made noted, and it's nice to hear what Joe's comments were on the intent behind that, because I was sort of processing that earlier, and one of my responses to it when I was reviewing my packet earlier this week was that it felt very suburban to me for this neighborhood. So I don't know how you strike the balance when you're trying to get something to fade away, but then it feels very maybe not, how do you not mimic the architecture of the neighborhood, but maybe not hit a suburban note? Whereas the first design definitely didn't feel suburban, but maybe you felt like it was too derivative. I don't know. So I'll, you know, maybe it's an impossible task and you just pick a direction and go with it. I'm pleased to see these two buildings, the two historic buildings, get back into use. And we certainly don't want to mimic them exactly. So I'll just, if that's unclear and vague enough for everyone, I guess I'll say that. But I guess my gut reaction to it was that it felt very suburban for this space. The lack of eaves, the sort of flatness of the facade, the window placements. It did have a very suburban feel for the neighborhood.
Stuart?
Hi, Stuart Giveny, Chair. Sorry, the Chair, I have a question. Within the guidelines under new construction, typically buildings have to be differentiated enough that you can distinguish the historic structures and the new build. And I think they've done a great job of distinguishing these. My question would be, might there be a color palette that was a little softer to draw less attention, as Joe mentioned, to the eye from the street perspective? Granted, these are just renderings, But I certainly appreciate the cleanness and the respectful nature of the neighborhood and putting the historic structures at the most important perspective.
The color difference, I had also wondered about. The original structures have been painted white. Their previous design had been white, if I recall. And I guess it would depend somewhat on the color of the brick. If it's not terribly intense, it may not be that big of a contrast. Once you put a painted brick, you end up with a maintenance issue forever too. So, but it may be something that they consider, the palette on it. And then as long as I'm talking, I might as well make my comment and then I'll move on to Aaron. I'm a little concerned about the overhangs on this. It seems like all the houses in the neighborhood and all the buildings have a little bit more of an overhang. And I think the lack thereof gives it a little bit of a suburban office building feel. Maybe that would make it feel more contextual with the neighborhood. And contemporary buildings do have an overhang, so I don't think it'd be confusing to that people are wondering. See, on the rendering, it looks like there's some, but on the elevation, it didn't look like there was any, so it could be just a inconsistency with the drawings. Aaron?
I agree. I think it's nice to just let the historic buildings be the forefront. And I think the other contrast that feels uncomfortable to me is the whiteness or the lightness of the gable feature thing, which I think is part of what makes me feel it's a little bit suburban and kind of making that such a prominent feature to stick out. I would prefer not to see that. Even if it was just a darker color that didn't stand out quite so much, to let those historic buildings really be the forefront. Because there is so, it just feels funny behind there with that being so prominent. And I do agree, Clyde, with the flatness for you, Jackie, both mentioned, and I think the overhangs would go a long way to giving it some depth and feeling to it.
Does anything, or does anyone want to add anything else to it? Okay, what I'm basically hearing, if I can sum it up and then please disagree with me, is that we're pretty much okay with it. There's nothing that is so dramatic that we would not consider looking at it further. Is that the general feeling of the commission? Okay.
Gibbon, agree.
Okay, I'm seeing head shake. So I think that concludes that item. I hope that was helpful. And we will move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is agenda item 6, 62 West Beachwall Boulevard. And I believe there are a couple of people here this evening representing the project. Is that correct? If so, unmute yourselves. Berlon and Steve. You swear to tell the truth of your testimony before the commission this evening?
Yes.
Okay, ours.
Yes.
And then please state your name after saying yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, Dean Berlon, yes.
Okay. And is Steve there also?
He is supposed to be there.
Well, it looks like he's not there, so we're going to go ahead and I guess you represent.
Okay, you can just go ahead.
Connie, can you present?
So this is for to enclose an existing garage, or basically the garage door opening. On the north elevation, which is the rear of the property, it would be infilled. The current proposal that you have is to infill it with a door and windows. They are considering just doing windows with no door. And also to construct a new detached garage. And the reason they want to infill the door on the existing garage is very small, not compatible with current sized cars. The scale of the original overhead door opening and the brick lintel will be maintained. And as I said, the proposed changes to the garage and house would not be from the street. And this is conceptual.
Didn't realize it was conceptual. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Dean, do you want to add anything else to that?
No, so basically just conceptually, if it's okay to build a garage back behind this property and then enclose the existing garage, maintaining the existing building sizes and stuff. We're still looking at materials and fenestration, so it's more right general concept.
Okay, thank you. Because this is conceptual, we don't need a motion. They need some feedback. Would it be easier, the board member or commissioners, if I call you out to make comments, or do you just want to make them at will? Hearing any feedback on that, so I'm going to call people out to make comments. Joseph, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I think the project's headed in the right direction. I have no problem with what the applicant's proposing overall.
Thank you. Stuart?
Stuart Gibney, I believe that the proposed conceptual addition of the garage is a great solution for a parking problem that will ultimately preserve the home as well. I feel that the garage is really tight to the house, and it must be super challenging to get in there successfully. So I think this will be a really good opportunity.
Aaron?
I agree with Joe and Stuart. I think it's a really creative solution to the issue, and I think it's appropriate.
Jackie?
I also think this one makes a lot of sense, and I particularly think because when you look at the house from the front, the way the garage is oriented and placed on the house, it makes it actually fairly easy for us to talk about and rule on, because you don't even have a front-facing garage door that we have to grapple with. How does this change the way the house talks to the street? And so I think that that's I'll say that in terms of as the homeowner goes forward, the less you ask us to make changes to that front of the house and the way it talks to the street, the easier it is for us looking at this, because you've got, with the garage door on the back, you're not really looking at making major changes to the way this house fits into the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm in agreement with all of those comments. It looks like the current garage had an addition to make it longer at one point, and so nice back, and good luck with you. Do you have any other questions from us?
No, good. No questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next item, and good luck. Yes.
Real quick, I have a question for you. I think that this is close enough. Would there be any value in approving this, allowing staff to review details for final application and certificate?
If that's the wish of the commission, you could certainly make that into a motion.
I think it's a great project, and I think that they're very well prepared.
How does the rest of the commissioners feel?
I will defer to the architects on the commission. I think that you all often have things to say about details when people are making changes to window openings and things like that.
Jamie's got a comment here.
Pardon me?
The Historic Preservation Officer, Jamie Goodman.
Oh, okay. Mr. Goodman.
Yeah, I would say that definitely in-house we can handle that, and that would be checking all the openings, making sure everything did meet what we believe is this standard. I think these drawings are already, almost all the way there, and that is something that we could do if the commission is good enough to let us finish it up for them.
Yeah, as an architect, I feel comfortable with that position. I have trust in this in the staff's ability to work out the details on it from this point. I'm sure they'll do a great job. And if there's any difficulty, they will bring it back to the commission. Do I hear that in the form of a motion?
Stuart Gibney, regarding HR 20 03 62 West Beachwall Boulevard. I would like to approve as submitted, with staff having the final say on details, cut sheets for the completion of the certificate of appropriateness.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Aaron Prosser, I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on it? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Joseph?
Aye.
Jackie?
Yes.
Stuart?
Aye.
Aaron? And the chair also agrees. Congratulations, Dean. You went away with more than you came for.
I love that. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, best of luck to you.
Bye.
We are moving on to agenda item number 7, 373 and 375 West Rich Street. The project has received additional letter of support from Jim Sweeney from Sweeney Associates, Jeff Darby and Nancy Recchi have also written letters of support on the project. I believe we have 3 people from Casco this evening on the project. You, I guess we don't really raise our hands, do we? You swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening. Please start by saying you and then state your name.
I do.
Start.
I do. Brent Myers.
I do. Matt Toddy.
We also have one other from Casto on, is our corporate attorney, C.H. Waterman, although I don't think he has anything to say. He's just listening in.
Why don't, if you don't mind, go ahead and swear yourself in and say your name in case you want to say something, then we won't have to do it later.
I do. C.H. Waterman.
Thank you. Connie, will you present the project?
Yes, so this is a project that was conceptually before the commission in February. It's for the rehabilitation of 2 buildings, 373 West Rich Street and the adjacent 375 West Rich Street, which is outlined on your agenda and in the packet materials. The share he says he's having a little bit of trouble sharing right now, so I'm not sure if you're seeing everything on your screen yet. There would also be a new connector, patio areas, and parking. So based on the standards for demolition, the historic and architectural value of 373 West Rich will be affected. Therefore, proof of any unusual and compelling circumstances or substantial economic hardship in retaining the 3rd floor of the structure would be required. As discussed in February, murals could be supported if removable. The connector is located in the same area of a catwalk historically associated with the buildings and is largely glass, making it visually open. So that is a positive. The footprint of the monumental stairs and patio do not reflect the historic precedent of the 1-story wedge-shaped office space formerly located in front of 375 Rich Street, which was just a comment from last time. I don't think that's really a deal breaker. So staff supports the rehabilitation of both buildings, but does not support full-scale removal of the 3rd floor without in some way retaining the mass and scale of the
Okay, thank you. Representatives of the owners, if you could limit or at least emphasize your comments to the concerns that the commissioners had at the last meeting, and what changes you've made to the project in order to accommodate those concerns?
Yes, since I'm new to the meetings, this is Bill Reed. I'm one of the partners here at Casto. I just wanted, if I could, give you guys a 5-minute briefing or 3 minutes on.
3 minutes, please.
Okay. First of all, I am a big, passionate preservation person. I've done a lot of different projects, and I just wanted to let you know a little bit of what happens, and because this does reflect on this third floor issue. Projects that we've been able to do, like the Julian, like Barrett, and the Baldwin Piano Factory, all are very economically viable, work out great. We've also done projects like 5 houses on East Broad Street that were between Sherman and Wilson that were at the request of the city, not financially viable, but the right thing to do. And in that category, projects that I've done with my partners has been 8 East Broad, which is a Frank Packard building, totally non-viable. We even did a 16-story addition, so we pulled out all the stops because it was the right thing to do to the first high-rise in Columbus, Ohio. And then the Levesque is not a financially wonderful thing, but it's certainly iconic for Columbus. So as we've gotten into this building, and I really appreciate you giving me the time, because this is really important. This building, I worked hard with my partners to try to get them to save this from the very beginning. Originally, it was CMHA. We had it in contract. They needed to give it to someone else. We put it back in contract after a couple of other deals didn't work out, and those were excellent development companies that were working on this. So we're back again. We had another person that was a tenant that fell through. But we believe in this because we've done so much in the neighborhood. It's good for the neighborhood. So just a quick thing on the numbers before I turn it over. I think I'm only up to 2 minutes. Normal retail development might be a couple $100 a square foot, 200, 225. As this is designed without the third floor, we're already at $480 per square foot, including the land and the soft cost. So the rents make no sense. The deal makes no sense now, but we are trying to do an adaptive reuse, and we're still preserving about 80% of this project. And then if we were to add this third floor, we went to another structural engineer, got more information, checked it out a couple of different ways. That third floor by itself is almost like $600 to $700 a square foot. It takes it from the realm of doing the right thing into the realm of we can't make it work at all, and the building just sit. So I'm a believer in restoration. I live in a historic neighborhood. I believe in everything you guys do. I think there ought to be more controls. But I just wanted to say, from my perspective, also, I'm an architect. I've been doing this stuff my whole life, and there's really not more we can do. We've tried and we've spent a lot of money, and I really want to try to do the right thing and save these buildings. It was never in my intention to take off any of the top floor. I was certain we could save the whole thing, but I'm thoroughly convinced, and I know with my partners and financially, we just can't make it work any other way. So I'll turn this over to Brent and Matt to kind of go through briefly. It sounds like you want to kind of go quickly. So we've got Brent Myers and Matt Toddy from the architectural firm. And Brent and Matt, you go ahead, and then we'll be open for questions. Anything else you guys would like to ask us?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. This is Brent Myers with Casto, and thank you to the commissioners again for your time tonight and follow up to our conceptual review back in February. And following our meeting in February, we took your comments and feedback, and in part understood the need to update our package, provide further detail and clarity on on what was new alterations versus what was remaining, and hopefully our package reflects that in follow up to those conversations. And in the essence of time, happy to jump to those items of discussion that have been raised and we've touched on previously in February. And so to start, I'll just quickly touch on each of those. And Matt Toddy with Design Collective can jump in to talk a little more in detail on the design perspective, and happy to answer any further questions from there. But one being, we know there was some conversation around the monument stairs coming from Rich Street, and there was reference to a structure that previously was on the site in front of the building there at 375 West Rich Street. It's our understanding that at some point in time, which is unknown, that structure was lost. And we're not frankly able to trace what that structure was, but wanted to give a little context on the stairs coming from Rich Street. And as the commission may know, and I think this was referenced in our previous meeting, Rich Street actually was previously lowered from the original grade, which was where the second story of the 373 building is currently. So that second story previously served as what was the street level storefront until the Rich Street was lowered in 1922, and obviously the first floor, as we see it now, became the street level storefront. So we had come up with the idea of these stairs and sort of the welcoming balcony on the second story to tie in to the history and the fact that at one point in time both those levels were used as the street level storefront. And we're trying to engage patrons and pull them in from Rich Street. And we are preserving the wood storefronts there that are shown in those renderings on both the first and second level. And again, in this plan, folks will be able to enter from both the existing street level grade as well as what was once the street level grade on the second story. And so that's the reasoning behind that design. And obviously, we've tried to work in some of the principal building materials with the concrete stairs and patio and tie into the existing theme and style of these buildings. And then second, touching on the murals, we understand that based on the previous discussion that the commission needs some further clarification on what those look like. And ultimately, those that are shown on here right now are just conceptual. And we understand that if we were to propose moving forward with murals in some form on the building, we would need to come back through at that time for approval. So that's not something that they're really just conceptual in these renderings and not something that we're looking to move forward with. So
okay, thank you. Is there someone else was there 3 people that wanted to speak?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. This is Matt Toddy with Design Collective. We've been working with Casto on the development of this project, and I just want to point out that we also we took the board's comments or the commission's comments to heart. We had previously engaged Jazerac Gears, structural engineering firm, to come and perform a structural assessment of this building. At the commission's request, we actually reached out and engaged Shirley Metz Bowman Hawk for a second opinion on this. Both of those reports were conclusive. They led to the same result, which was the the economic infeasibility of preserving that third floor. So to that end, we have made every effort to preserve as much of this building as we can, or these 2 buildings. And I would also like to point out, that Bill mentioned Casto's commitment to preservation. The way that this building, East Building, currently exists, it is too decrepit and requires too much intervention that north facade that fronts Rich Street will have to be demolished and rebuilt to make sure it's structurally feasible. So, I would just ask the commission to bear that in mind, that we are committing to preserving to the extent that we're basically rebuilding the building in place.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have comments? Joseph, would you like to start?
Sure. For the bulk of it, I really don't have many issues with what the applicant has proposed. I'm maybe less concerned about actually having a roof on the building, 4 stories in the air. I think one of the struggles we have is that we have to, our goal is sort of not supporting, not necessarily supporting new construction endeavors and how great a design looks or how we may feel about a project. In some ways, from a new construction perspective, as we're charged with really making decisions based on the guidelines. And the guidelines still talk about preserving historic material. And when we make a decision, it really relates back to how has the applicant done on preserving materials that are already in place that are greater than 50 years old in this case. And given that the building is both on the National Register and on the local register, that kind of makes those decisions heavier. In some ways, there's a lot of importance here, obviously, especially in a neighborhood where a lot of historic structures are gone already. From me personally, if I want to, sort of say a little bit more about, where I wish a little bit more could be done to save a full 4-story front facade. I'm not bothered by the massing being dropped as it is on the other sides. I wish there was a way to do that front facade. Although I also know that the building, in question here that's receiving the most demolition is in an advanced state of decay as well. And it's a delicate balance of losing a structure entirely versus not saving it in some form. So that there is that delicate balance. I did want to bring up that when we talk about guidelines and applicability in a project, the only thing I do want to be a little bit concerned about is how we're treating the front facade too, because there is a lot of wood detailing, as I remember, on the first and second floors, as shown right here. This is a great image to have up at the moment, where the graffiti runs. Right above that graffiti, there's a lot of intact window mullions and wood related storefront components. And it looks like the applicant in their renderings, and again, it could be the disadvantage of a rendering right now. It sort of shows a lot of new stuff as a storefront, as well as we kind of have a lot of ideas about what the windows looked like on that third and fourth floors. Just to, we have a lot of people that come before the commission and ask forgiveness about putting in vinyl windows in place of other windows, and the guidelines are pretty clear about replacing sort of in kind. And so again, it's not a preference about or the type of new architecture rather than we have to make our decisions by the guidelines. And I don't know that some of what we're seeing on the front facade really meets the guidelines. And if we're going to make a decision that sort of varies, we have to have justification for that varying. So I guess at this moment I'm sort of struggling with how to look at this project a little bit. I know staff's recommendation is to still preserve something to the effect of the full massing. And this elevation that's up here now, for example, really shows you if there was a way to save that, at least on the front facade, I think I could give on many other facades, because then the original massing is still there, at least referenced in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily that there needs to be a building all 4 floors, throughout, but that's the extent of my comments. I understand the need to find a middle ground by the applicant. I have no problem with trying to find that middle ground. I just need to make sure we meet the guidelines in our decisions.
Okay, Stuart?
I might be trying to say something too.
Can I reply to that real quick? Or do you go to the person? I can do one.
If you can keep it really short.
Yeah, basically, I appreciate your comments, Joseph. We really care about what the windows would be. I don't have a problem with you even approving them. The other thing I really feel strongly about, totally agree with you on, is that blue color wood millwork. So, I mean, that really has to be done right, authentic. And, I don't even have a problem coming back with some millwork shop drawings, have you guys approve. We want to do this right. And if we're going to make it look right, we're going to do a lot of things inside the buildings that are authentic, graphics, everything. So I have no problem with coming back to you guys with some of the detail as we work it out.
Jamie?
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, if we can keep this to the commissioners and then we can come back to the applicants for some response and question asking, that's great. I appreciate it. It seemed very timely right then, but in the interest of us staying on target, we'll finish with commissioners. There'll be an opportunity to respond. So if you need to, Mr. Riot, please take notes.
Okay. Good point. Thank you.
Hold on me though.
Stuart, would you like to make any comments?
Stuart Gibney, Commissioner. I think that the Casto Group has been a great partner in the city of Columbus in preserving iconic buildings, and I think this would be another great project for them to steward into the future. No pun intended. But the interesting part is we have two distinct, very valuable engineering reports that talk about the third floor and the structure and the costs of maintaining those. I'm in favor of what we see. It's my hope that we might be able to come up with a creative solution to preserve as much of that building as possible. I know that the utmost care will be taken within the fabric of the building with that Design Act detail. But I would love to exhaust all possibilities of any kind of preservation of that portion that there's some concern of that takes a project that's not financially viable to a worse financially viable situation, which obviously the commission has no recourse for finances of the project. But the reality is this is a big project and it takes a lot of care and a lot of massage to make this work. And so I just want to say I appreciate the Casto Group coming forward to bring this project to light, and I hope that we can come up with a reasonable solution.
Okay, Aaron?
I agree. I mean, I think it was super helpful to have the additional engineering reports and just understanding at times we have to make sacrifices to preserve the larger fabric. And to Joe's point earlier, this is a neighborhood that's lost a lot of the historic fabric. Understanding it's a heavy lift. I still agree with Joe and Stuart and everybody that finding some kind of solution to give a nod to that massing on that third floor would make it a lot more palatable for me, and some acknowledgement of that original massing would be really helpful. Again, not necessarily that it has to preserve all four sides or anything like that, but some acknowledgement that the building itself had a different mass and form in its historic condition. So I think that's the only thing I'm still missing a little bit here, but that would be my only comment.
Okay, and let's see, Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to say to Casto and your team, to the Casto team, thank you for the clarity in your documents. Number one, that there was a lot that I was able to understand that I have a couple comments on. And thank you especially for the second opinion. I know that cost you something, and that was something we asked for, and that was incredibly helpful coming into tonight's discussion, because I probably would have given you the same comment if you had not done that. Thank you for all the other preservation work you've done in Columbus, and I'm glad that you're taking this project on. These buildings are incredibly important. I want to note that when we look at these images of what the buildings are now, and when we see them with both buildings losing a story, that there is a significant character change. And so the story the buildings are telling, when they go from the story, as in the narrative, the buildings are telling, when they go from the height they are now to the height they will be if they were to lose a story, or is a different narrative. And so it's something we have to really take seriously. Within our guidelines, it tells us that demolition is the most serious review that we undertake, really. When we look at the way that the guidelines are worded, they tell us the things that we talked about last time about what our standards are for looking at that. And so that's why we're really here having this conversation. So I see from your two engineering reports that we really are looking at this as an incredibly difficult undertaking, and I want to say that it's moved my needle in terms of saying this may be something we're not able to do, that you're not able to do, and I want to acknowledge that you might not be able to save that whole floor. That said, I agree with what the other commissioners have said, that I'd like to see something that attempts to acknowledge visually this additional floor on at least one of these buildings. And I don't necessarily mean a straight up facade front propped up like a Hollywood set, but something. And you all are architects and you're an amazing team, so I feel like you might be able to do something here that would satisfy that. The other thing I want to make sure I say is that I went through and looked at all the pages, and I saw a lot of window changes. a lot of window changes. Windows infilled, new openings, and windows removed. And not just the windows that would be removed if there were a story taken off each building. And I want to note that we have even had tax credit projects come before us that had already been approved by the SHPO that bricked in, say, a door at the rear of a commercial building, that this commission had to deny the bricking in of that opening because our guidelines don't allow it. And so we need to not assume that we can just approve lots of opening changes because we really care about these buildings. So I want to give you that feedback now, early in the project, so that you can go back and really put a hard eye on this and understand that unless there's a deeply compelling reason, we also cannot change the character of this building massively by changing lots of openings. So I just wanted to also share that. I'm really excited about these buildings getting new life and being saved, and want to thank you again for taking the project on.
Thank you. And I would agree with the comments of the commissioners. We do have 6 additional projects to get to after this one. I'm also hearing some concerns of the commissioners that seem to still be outstanding. I guess at this point, we need to have a motion either to continue or we need to have a motion to approve. Does any commissioner want to make either of those?
I would entertain making a motion to continue. This is Stuart Gibney. I would like to make a motion for HR-20-05-012-373-375 West Ridge Street to continue to next month's Historic Resources Commission agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Aaron Presser, I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the continuation?
Yes.
Bill, no, I'm sorry, you're out of order. We are voting on the continuation. We're not voting on the issue.
Chair Clyde, Henry, Joe McCabe here. One thing I would like actually to suggest is that so that the applicant just doesn't feel like we're doing this, with not trying to address or have further conversation. What I would actually request is that in the case of other projects, we've actually had a special meeting dedicated to a project. I know staff has to advertise that, and that way it doesn't have to wait a full month. I would request that staff actually work towards setting up a special meeting for this so that we could actually dedicate A, more time to this, and B, work with the applicant further. And C, just so the applicant doesn't have to wait an entire another month to go through wrapping this up, especially if there's further dialogue that needs to happen. I think this is a pretty complex project with a lot of decision that needs to happen. I do think it's worthy to just at least hear what the applicant feels as far as it being continued or not, or whether they would really prefer to have a decision. But I would at least encourage staff to call a special meeting.
Okay, excellent suggestion. Would you be willing to amend your motion to continue it to a special meeting or to the next meeting, and that will give us the.
Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order.
Yes.
Did the applicant have time to respond to Q&A before a vote was taken?
No.
Excuse me, Mr. Toddy. Mr. Toddy.
Yes, sir.
This is what I've been trying to get the attention of the chair for. We are going to have that, and if you'd let us conduct the meeting, we will do so. Thank you. But Mr. Chair, we did say that we'd have an opportunity for them to respond to what we've said. I know we have many other items. We have a motion that is on the table, but it would behoove us to let them respond briefly.
Okay, will do. Go ahead then with your comment.
Okay, thank you. First of all, we would be open to a special meeting to discuss this further. But I will say that we are so far off, we aren't going to be able to do. I'm going to say this right up front. I'm happy to have a special meeting so that we can discuss this in a lot more detail, because obviously we're under some time constraints here. I've done a lot of this. Somebody's going to have to trust that we can't do much more. And even to do, and because I thought about this myself, a skeleton frame up there just to show a third story. but that structure has to go all the way down, and it even further limits what's in the lower floors. So we've put so much thought into this. We're about where we have to drop this and then just kind of move to demolition or a request a demolition permit or something, or just move on. And I would hate to see that happen. I mean, I really think this is the right thing for the neighborhood and as much as we can do. So if we could have another special meeting where we can explain things further and get into the cost a little further. Just the last thing I'd like to say is your three guidelines as to whether you can approve something, as I read the code, is economic hardship? Is it a compelling, unusual and compelling circumstance? Or is the merit of the replacement project in a way that this building is partially a replacement? And by the way, we aren't taking a floor off that other building like someone suggested. It's still the full size, exact same shape. So I think we've met all three of your decision-making reasons. Happy to have a meeting. But again, we've been through this a lot, and I'm not real hopeful we can do much more. We're at the edge of the cliff, ready to fall off, I guess. Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you. A quick question for staff. If we did a special meeting, how soon could we do it? Could we do it next week, you believe, if we advertised? Jamie, do you know? Could we do a special meeting next week, or would we be better to withdraw the motion? I'm just concerned about time. We've spent the vast majority of our meeting time, I think around 40% almost, on this one project.
Sure. We would have to check the schedules. We have mandates about how we have to legally notice meetings. But we do have the business meeting that is coming up that we will have in June as well. We will have the hearing in June as well. The switches then. I can't speak to exactly how fast we can do it. It has to be noticed in the city bulletin, and we can attempt to get something together for next week. There are a lot of other hearings next week as well.
Okay.
Chairman, can I ask a question?
Jackie.
I didn't hear the applicant say that they were going to try to tear the buildings down if they didn't get a meeting in a week. I think that, can we move forward on the intent to get a special meeting as soon as possible and understand that a week is a little bit aggressive, that maybe it'll be a 2-week process?
And I'm not saying, I'm sorry to jump back in. I'm not saying that we wouldn't try to do it as soon as possible. I just want to temper expectations with reality.
I actually think that having a special meeting for this project would be really helpful, given all of the details and discussion that's been around it anyways. So I think giving us, the attention to that and allowing the discussion to happen would be really great.
I agree, Commissioner Barton. I'm just trying to inject
realism.
Yes, that we don't do our best always.
Bill, would you be content or open to a special meeting?
We would be happy to have a special meeting, and we also will be open to working with you beyond this, because it is complicated, with further approvals on some of the details as we go. But we are getting a little pressed here, but happy to meet with you on a special meeting, even if it's 2 weeks from now or 2.5 or 3 or something.
Understood.
Chair, can I ask a quick question? Like, in terms of what components of the project need to be approved in the near term, and what could we look at later in terms of window detailing and things? Is the demolition, is that what is pushing the issue right now in terms of time?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yes.
What,
The building is really deteriorating. These rains have made it worse. We're having trouble keeping people out of there. It's dangerous. The wall along the railroad's cracked badly. Believe me, it's if we could do more, we would. And I really think that our option to the plans that we have is a demolition. I hate to say that, but I want you all to understand one other thing. I have a lot of my partners saying we can do a lot more with that site than say.
No, I 100% understand. I don't mean to cut you off. I totally get it.
So
Yeah, here. I think one of my questions is one of our burdens for the demolition approval is that we have a project that we feel like is moving forward. Is that fair, Jamie?
Yeah.
Project to come, right? And so that's part of our burden. So
Correct.
I feel like the commission in total doesn't feel 100% about some of the details of what the project is moving forward, but there seems to be consensus that there is a project coming, and we need to look at window details. We're going to look at your wood millwork and all that other stuff, right? But is there any appetite for the commission to go ahead with the demolition approval tonight, understanding that all other details would need a special meeting to go through?
Commissioners, anybody want to speak to that?
Just throwing it out there.
So we would have to defeat the motion to
Or
have it withdrawn.
Because I feel like, I mean, from my perspective, the two engineering reports and understanding where they are with the need to have some level of sacrifice to the structure to save the bigger fabric. I don't entirely appreciate the idea that you'd come back for an entire demolition, because we would not permit that. And you'd have to get our permission to do that. So that's not an option. And I understand your partners have other ideas, but I think it's reasonable at this juncture to understand, especially with the support letters we received from the historic preservation community. I would be comfortable voting on the demolition tonight. Jamie?
I'm sorry to continue to interject.
I may be out of turn.
No, you're not. That's very helpful, and I appreciate Chair Clyde that should be moving on. I think that it is still fair to have a discussion in a special meeting context of some kind of motion towards that third floor. I understand that it's been said that even a framework couldn't be done. It's fair to talk about that. But I think tonight you could still give a motion, an indication of support for the redevelopment project, but an imperative to please show us that there is no way to motion towards that third floor volume in any way. And I think those are all fair things. And I'm going to step back now.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
I'm sorry, Stuart Gibney. I know that the original motion was to continue to the next meeting in June. I'd like to modify that to allow for a special meeting at its convenience and availability for staff to put that together.
Thank you. Is it okay with the second? Okay, any further discussion on this? Not, I'm going to call for the vote. Aaron? Aaron, yes or no?
Yes.
Stuart? Joseph?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
And the chair agrees. So therefore, we will set up a special meeting at the earliest convenience. I thank all the participants for coming. And we are technically, we have supposed to conclude the meeting at 11 minutes. However, we have a grace period that will allow us to go, I believe, another, it's over, I think. So let's move on and let's still try to get through this agenda that we're about halfway done with, because there are other people who are waiting for their items to be heard. The next item is 12 on Bryden Road. And I believe Scott Baker, architect, is here on that project. Is that correct? Scott, are you there? Scott, unmute if you're there. You swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do.
And please state your name.
Scott Baker.
Thank you very much. Connie, will you present the project?
So this is for porch repair, and the commission saw the packet at the March business meeting, and then the March hearing was canceled. So following the March business meeting and a site visit by myself, which the commission requested, the applicant has agreed to repair and retain the upper and lower porch railings rather than replace. Most columns are split and appear to be deteriorated beyond feasible repair. Design base and capital on proposed placement columns do not match the existing. And Mr. Baker has provided detailed information about the measurements of the existing and the measuring columns, the shaft, the height of the shaft, the circumference at the top and bottom right there. So the question is are the columns that are proposed for replacement? In my mind, the columns could be removed because of their condition. So are the columns proposed for replacement a close enough match to allow this particular column to be replaced? Or do we need to have some more research done to get something that would be more closely matching to the original?
Okay, thank you. Scott, would you like to add anything to that we need to know? Scott?
Yeah, nothing to add.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments, starting with Jackie?
I'm supportive of replacement based on the condition. The only thing I'll note is that detailing at the top. I'm really sorry to see that go if there's no like replacement that can be found. So.
Aaron?
Agree with Jackie.
Okay, Stuart?
I think that the comments that were said are valuable. I think that an attempt should be to salvage those rosettes that are at the top and to reapply those. There's a photo available right as we speak. I think that's a very distinguishing characteristic that would be really important to put back to that. If we can incorporate that into a replacement, I would be fully supportive.
Okay, and Joseph?
I am fully supportive as well, so long as the applicant can find a way to replicate the little band and rosettes that you see occurring around the top of the column. I think all the materials warrant replacement as proposed, but that's just that one detail which, hearing or seeing that, I would be amenable to approving with a condition that the rosette is replicated in some way and that detail could be worked out with staff.
Okay, Scott, would you be amenable to trying to salvage the rosettes and or mold one or cast one or in some way have them reappear in the column?
I think we would be okay to approve that as a condition, and then if we find that it's not possible at all, just have to come back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Will someone put that in the form of a motion?
Sure. Stuart Gibney, in regards to HR-20-033-011-121 Brighton Road. I note the application as submitted with the addition of creating a in-kind detail matching what exists to be appropriate and to be submitted to staff for final approval.
Is there a second?
McCabe, second.
Great. Any further discussion? If not, let's go for the vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Stuart?
Aye.
Joseph?
Yes.
And the chair agrees. So motion passes. Thank you, Scott. The next item is 517 Park Street, the AC Hotel. It's a request on a signage. Would you present it, please?
Yes. So this is for new signage at the AC Hotel. newly constructed AC hotel. The current package includes several internally illuminated wall or projecting signs, a non-aluminum placard, and window vinyl. At this point, the non-illuminated placard and window vinyl are the only two items that would meet the guidelines. Staff has provided the signage company with detailed notes on their initially submitted package about what type of signage could be approved by the commission. The proposed signs do not meet that, the guidelines currently.
Okay, thank you. We have, I believe, 3 different representatives from the ownership. Is that correct? If so, do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening? On mic yourself or mic yourself and state your name, or say I do and then state your name, please.
I do, Mickey Wisco.
Thank you. Is there anybody else, or is Mikey Wisco the only one? I have 3 here.
Nick Muniz is on the call as well. He's in your list here. He was to be presenting.
Yeah, is he on or not?
He's
I can see it, I can't hear it.
Okay, Matt, are you on or not? Okay, so let the record show that Mickey Wisco is the only one who's been sworn in to speak. I guess we've already had the project presented. Mr. Wisco, is there anything that you want to add?
Yeah, the current code doesn't allow for signage above 25 square feet or above, I believe, 20 some feet. Obviously, this multi-story residential or hotel complex with, I believe, 9 stories, not having any signage next to a major highway at a scale that would be visible by passerbys would obviously be an issue. The signs that are on lower street level are kind of a brand standard signs on the canopies there that are just over square footage allowances. Again, are kind of a brand standard that they would like to maintain. The larger main ID signs on the building towers, we did switch to a design with a routed and back look, so only the copy would illuminate. It's more of a halo look approach. But that's really all, trying to just present this as a way that we can ensure that we're going to get enough visibility for the signage for the hotel that it deserves and needs for the area.
Thank you. Commissioners, comments? Let's start with Stuart.
Hi there, this is Stuart Gibbony. I feel that we have a substantial amount of signage that needs to be reviewed. This is a large structure, and I think that scale is very important when we take into consideration what this project meets. I would personally approve for a good portion of the signage. I have questions about some of the others. If it's possible, I think that this also could warrant a special meeting to allow for discussion of these details and how we could allow this to happen within the guidelines.
Okay. Any comments?
I don't have a lot of comments. The only thing I wanted to ask is, I think this interior illuminated sign, that doesn't fit within our guidelines, correct?
Connie, you want to respond to that?
Yes, that's correct. If the entire cabinet is illuminated, that's not allowed. If the cabinets are opaque and only the light comes through like this, like AC hotels, that could be approved. That could be appropriate.
Right. So I just wanted to note that for the applicant so that they could make adjustments if necessary.
Okay,
The
Joseph?
sign that is monotone.
Joseph?
Given the nature of the project, the scale, et cetera, I would actually be okay with some form of approval, though I think there's some things to be just fleshed out here. I don't know if it's worthwhile just sort of approving the items that are already consistent with the guidelines or not. But generally, it's new construction, and there is a certain amount of scale to it. And if some minor adjustments were made, it'd be, I think, rather consistent with being okay with the intent, I think, of the applicant.
And I agree with all that. I think especially on the 670 side, I don't have a lot of heartburn about it being a larger sign, obviously, on that side, new construction. The more street level, sidewalk level signs on Park Street, especially, I think would warrant a little bit more detailed look. But in general, it's new construction, and I wouldn't have concerns over varying from the guidelines in this situation.
Okay, and I also agree with what most of what's been said. The west facade faces away from the historical district. Anyway, it's literally right on the border of the historical district. And I believe that some of the signs actually advertise the bar or the hotel, and so therefore those are actually two different businesses. And in other buildings we've allowed that. So I think we're from what I'm hearing, the package looks possible. Let me ask a quick question of Mickey. What's your time frame? Is it critical that this be approved tonight, or could we combine it with our special meeting and then you could have all the details wrapped up by that time?
The timeline at this point is not critical. That a month would do us in. We'd be okay with that.
Okay. Stuart had sort of suggested.
Mr. Chair, there's Nick, I think, has his audio fixed.
Okay.
Nick, yes. Hi, this is Nick Munoz.
Wait, stop. Nick, do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name.
Nick Munoz.
Thank you. Okay, please.
Okay. Yeah, I think it sounds like the discussion on the street level signs. I just wanted to mention that all of these signage elements are kind of the brand standard. The AC Columbus sign, the AC Hotel Columbus sign being slightly outside of the size requirements is really the result of the name of the city being a part of the sign. So I think these are some things to consider, and the high signage as well. I think Mickey pointed it out, but those are blacked out cabinets with only the letters illuminated.
Okay, thank you. Desire to vote on this evening, or is there a desire to continue it and maybe combine it with our special meeting?
I'd like to.
Do you have a question?
Yes. Mr. Chair,
yes.
The question.
Yes.
The original packet was actually noted a little bit more clearly than this packet. So I think if they were able to submit some signage drawings that more clearly stated what is being shown, because I'm hearing someone say that there's a cabinet that does not have a face on it, and when I'm looking at it, I was thinking it did have a face on it. So I would encourage the commission to see that the guidelines are followed on the lower level signage, so that there is not any completely illuminated sign boxes. And if we could make that more clear, there may not even be a need for a special meeting if it could be more clear to staff what is being proposed for each signage.
And I agree with that, Connie, especially related to the set level signage. I understand your comment, Nick, about it being a brand standard, but there's a boatload of folks that come in with signage that are brand standards, and that doesn't meet guidelines, and so that has to change. So we can't approve your sign because it's brand standards. So I just want to be super clear about that. So I think if the sidewalk level signage met our standards, I would be comfortable with staff approval.
Jamie?
I think we should also be clear on, it's one thing to have light emitting only from the letters. That is not a halo lit situation. The very face of the letter would be opaque, and the light would be streaming from the sides of those push-through letters to create a halo. I would say that in the pedestrian space, I will reiterate that I believe that the opinion of these commissioners and of Ms. Torbeck, that especially in the pedestrian zone, we need to clearly follow the guidelines as they are. Where we're up high on the building, there's more of a gray area because of the fact that it is outside of what is normal within a historic district. I just wanted to add that clarification, and we did present all these detailed comments to the applicant in the past. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What, Aaron, did you have a comment?
Nope, sorry, I was just, Jamie stated it a lot better than I did in my first pass, so that was good.
Okay,
Commissioner Henry?
Yes.
In the case of HR 20-05-015517 Park Street, the AC Hotel, I'd like to make a motion to continue to the next meeting.
Jackie Barton, again.
Okay, you seconded it. Is there any further discussion on the continuum? If not, let's move to the vote. Joseph McKay.
Yes.
Stuart.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Jackie.
Yes.
And the chair agrees. Would hope that we can combine that with the other special meeting that we're trying. And let's move on to our 10th item. And our 10th item is 673 South Champion Avenue. We have the developer attending. Andy, right? Are you?
Mr. Chair.
Andy?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This application has been withdrawn. We can move to number 11.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that saves us a little time. Great. Number 11 is 935 East Broad Street. And I believe Madeline, is it Madeline's here representing the owner for the commission this evening. If so, unmute and say, I do, and then state your name.
We can't hear you, Madeline.
Christopher, you know if Madeline's here? Oh, I see her.
She is here. She just, we can't hear her. So either the microphone, if you use the alternative audio through your phone, that typically works.
Okay, let's move on to the item 12 and 13, and then we'll come back to this item, and we hope that we have audio by that time. Item 12 is 424 Oak Avenue, and I believe we have the owner attending. If so, Ray, will you unmute, and you swear to tell the truth in your testimony for the commission this evening? If so, say I do and state your name.
I do, Ray Kinchak.
Great, thank you. Connie, we present the project.
Okay, so this is for construction of a new garage. HPO staff, myself, has discussed the garage guidelines, which are on the reverse of your staff report, in regard to the use of double garage doors on the alley, and also indicated that the house is not craftsman style, so a half-light or 4-panel door would be more appropriate. In general, the proposed garage is typical of new garages approved in the Old Oaks neighborhood. The applicant would like to address the requirement for 2 garage doors on the alley and reasons for requesting a craftsman style door. The 10 by 10 concrete pad is not for additional parking, but for outdoor dining, eating, area. Recommend approval with any modifications required.
Thank you. Ray, do you want to add anything to?
No, I guess the only thing that I really would have in question is the single garage door off the alley. It's just having one door off the alley. I think it just makes it easier to park our big vehicles in instead of having it being down the middle. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward compared to other bills at Old Oaks.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments? Aaron, any comment?
Just again with the single door issue, we've typically only allowed a single door when there's a turning radius issue in the alley. Is there any evidence of that in this case, Connie?
No, it's it's shown on the site plan. There's a new garage also a couple doors down that the commission required 2 doors.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Joseph, any comments?
No, I have no comments. In fact, I would be all right being consistent with the comments that staff has already provided. And Mr. Chair, by the way, I believe Jamie has raised his hand too.
Oh, Jamie?
I just wanted to quickly say the plan clearly shows it's a 34-foot, which is sizable. So it does agree with a two-door garage would be feasible. Turning radius.
Jackie?
No comments. 2 doors.
Okay.
I do have a question. It says that there would be a 16-foot overhead garage door on the alley side and then a 9-foot overhead on the garage door facing the rear yard. What are the heights of these doors? I don't have the drawings in front of me. I just was curious.
The door off the alley is an 8-foot overhead door just because I drive a big full-size truck. And then the one off the alley, I think it's a 9-foot wide door. I'm not sure about the height though. I think it should be listed in there. But that's just, it's not to pull a vehicle through or anything. It's just, if I'm working on a car or something or working on my backyard, I can close the alley side and open up the backyard side just for a little bit more security. And then it's easier to get the lawnmower in and out and stuff like that.
Okay. I would be in favor of the double door on the alley side, consistent with the opening.
Okay, I can't remember where I am with the commissioners. Is there any commissioner left that needs to make a comment? Okay, does one of the commissioners want to make a motion, or do we have further discussion?
I think that we should, this is Stuart Gibney, by the way, as long as the applicant is okay with having 2 doors on the alley side, I would be willing to make a motion to that effect.
Okay, that's probably the only way it's going to pass. I think that's how it's going to go down. Is that going to work?
Just as long as I can get measurements for the 2 doors and I can fit my truck in there, I guess I have no other choice. But if I can't get my truck in a single door, there's no reason for me to build a garage.
Okay. Is there a second?
That's Aaron Prosser. I'll second.
Thank you. Further discussion on it? Okay, hearing none, let's vote. Aaron?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Stuart? And the chair agrees. Thank you very much for coming in. We're going to move on we're going to move back to item 11 because I believe we now have
yes.
And so it's 935 East Broad Street. And we have a representative. Swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening. If say I do, and please state your name and relationship to the project.
I do, Madeline Pesavento.
Thank you. Connie, will you present the project?
So this is for new signage in the front yard. The applicant requests 2 signs to provide visibility for the building and for the adjacent parking lot, which is on a separate parcel. Access to the parking is from the alley. An option would be a single sign located between the 2 parcels. Applicant requests a larger size of 16 square feet if reduced to 1 sign. And the 2 post signs are currently a bit larger than the 10 square feet allowable by the Short North Design Guidelines, which say that the height may not exceed 5 feet measured at grade, and the maximum allowable area is 10 square feet. So recommend installation of 1 10 square foot sign, combining the information of both signs and locating between the 2 parcels, or installation of 2 signs as proposed, but reducing to maximum of 10 square feet each. And I think the only reason 2 signs could be approved here, if the commission thinks it's appropriate, is because they would be on 2 separate parcels, and so for
excuse me.
Although one, I think one would be more appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Madeline, would you address to the 2 choices being presented to you, which one would be preferable?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time. And I'll start also by saying that we're happy to use any materials suggested by the Historical Commission, how you'd like us to illuminate it, if you'd like us to route it. The preferable conclusion would be 1 sign that is larger than the 10 square foot guideline. And I don't, we were told at some point that it could be 16 feet. And since we do have 2 lots, one at 935 East Broad and one at 947 East Broad, we went with the two sign option. We're a nonprofit, so we serve over 3,000 women each year. And we really need them to be able to find our center, and we get a lot of calls with a lot of trouble for that. So the current sign is actually 36 by 46, and we're proposing, if it's possible, just 1 sign at 48 by 48.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any comments on this? Let's start with
Yes, I like the idea of combining those things into 1 sign. I think that signage is really important to be able to communicate to your clients about where your business is, and a place to draw attention to that, which is slightly different than marketing and advertising. And I think there could potentially be a concern of sort of marketing and have details to the signage that goes beyond the scope of essentially describing what your business is and where the location is. So that's all the comment I have at this point.
I think, I know typically we utilize the Short North signage guidelines, but I think there's a pretty big difference between the character of High Street and the character of Broad Street, especially from the setbacks of the buildings and the speed with which you're driving on Broad Street as opposed to High Street. So I would be comfortable with a larger sign. I think it's a lot of text. It seems, and I don't know, Connie, I just don't know the Short North sign guidelines well enough, but are there limits to what not the content, but the type of the amount of text that can be on the sign?
I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know if Jamie could chime in based on recent lawsuits. Recent law, whether commission could at all say anything about what is actually on the.
What's going on here?
Not necessarily content, but I know we've had conversations in the university district around, where you have the name of the business versus what's like, if there's any restrictions, not content specific, but about that hierarchy, or if there's any, I don't know, there's Short North guidelines as well.
Well, in similar what we have said in the past, say if this was a restaurant, it would have the restaurant name, and then it wouldn't say eat, drink, sodas.
That's what I think I'm getting at. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at.
If I may, it would avoid, let's call it menu items. So that would speak to, you know, we do chili dogs, we do hamburgers, we do free pregnancy tests.
That was my question. It feels like, to Stuart's earlier point about kind of the marketing versus wayfinding, it feels like it's more marketing than wayfinding. And it's just my comment. I don't know if the other commissioners have that concern.
So the direction would be from those guidelines would be that their actual logo and that would be the majority of what any of the signage would be, and it wouldn't be an advertisement in any way. The need for them to be able to show the parking is another thing, and that's one of the reasons that in counseling this applicant we did discuss centering one, because they have the two lots, centering one sign between the two because of this parking issue. So in our opinion, it would be okay to advertise that it did have parking in the rear, but that the majority of this signage should be the Women's Care Center and their logo.
Okay. And then the proposed combined sign has just the parking, it's the right content, not the left content, is what we're looking at for the single sign. Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, although most of the have fine cocktails and dining. Jackie.
I think that I'm amenable to either approach, to two 10-foot signs that fit within the guidelines really easily. And I, like Aaron, can see an exception for making a larger sign. I realize that's not in the staff guidelines, but I think Broad Street cars are moving much more quickly. So if you were to put one sign out, you know, in a place where it's meant to catch vehicles, I get that. But likewise, I agree with the previous comments about the content, not sort of being your menu of items.
Okay, Joseph.
I ditto, same as many of the other commissioners have already stated. My concern is just, you know, making sure it contextually fits with the neighborhood and is it appropriate. Agree on the parking, agree that it doesn't need to be an advertisement of items, though. However, logo and address. You know, the one thing, by the way, I don't see on here necessarily is most signs around there have logo, name of business, and then have an address number. I don't know if that is something that's missing or if that's something the applicant is addressing otherwise. It is, you know, when you're driving down the street, if you're looking, you know, for this specific address at East Broad, if that was something that was supposed to be included on the sign or not. Just thought I'd bring that up, though.
Okay. My comments have been addressed, and
Mr. Chair, I think Jamie has a comment.
Jamie, yeah.
If I may,
it's quick.
I'm trying to stretch this out. Yes, it would be fair to say what they do. Not on menu services, but it could say, you know, pregnancy services.
Okay.
Women's Care Center pregnancy services. It doesn't list what they do. It doesn't list a menu item, but it does clarify what their business is. I hope that's clear.
Okay, or we could leave the final wording on this up to staff approval, and then we could get a motion on it.
My concern was just making sure that the applicant had something to move forward with.
Yep.
Okay, do I hear a motion on this? Or is there further discussion? Or Jackie, go ahead.
I just need to note that I need to go in a minute. So, yeah, I just want to put, I don't know if that jams you up for a quorum, but I'm going to have to go.
I believe we'll still have a quorum, and the meeting has to end. Our grace period ends in 5 minutes anyway. Does anyone want to make a motion on this?
This is Aaron Prosser, Clyde. Motion to approve HR-20-05-013935 East Broad Street. Signage to be submit signage to final either one or two. Did we determine if it's one or two signs, or are we letting staff do that? Sorry.
I think the general feeling is the client wants one, and most of the commissioners seem to have wanted one.
Okay, that's great. Approval for a new sign for 935 East Broad Street, signal designed to be approved by staff.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second, somebody? Joseph, will you second?
Stuart Gibney.
Okay, Stuart seconded it. Any further discussion? All those in favor, or I'm sorry, I got a call roll.
Yes.
Aaron. Jackie.
Yes.
Stuart.
Aye.
Okay, the chair also agrees, and we are into our last item with 4 minutes to go. It is 59 East Oakland Avenue, and I believe we have here representing. If so, please unmute your microphones. Your testimony this evening, please say I do and state your name.
I do. Charlie Griffey.
Thank you. Lee here?
He is not.
Okay. Connie, can you present the project?
This is for installation of a new dormer on the west slope of the roof to provide access to what is now a finished third floor space. The details of the dormer seem to be appropriate for this house. Dormers are typical for the neighborhood. The proposed dormer reflects the design, materials, and character of the house and is placed below the ridge line and set back from the eave line. Recommend approval of the application with any modifications you might see necessary.
Okay, thank you. Rep have anything to say, or do you want us to move ahead with the proposal?
You can move ahead.
Thank you. Any discussion on this?
Mr. Chair, I'd actually just like to make a motion in favor of approving HR-20-05-017, 59 East Oakland Avenue as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Aaron Prosser, I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. Jackie. Jackie, how do you vote?
She left.
Yeah, she's already on.
Okay.
Slide.
Record note that Jackie left, but we still have a quorum. Joseph.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Stuart.
Aye.
And the chair also agrees. We have no old business. We have no additional new business. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Stuart Gibbons made a adjourn. Joseph discussion. Hearing none. We will vote. Stuart, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aaron.
1 minute to spare. Yes.
Jackie has left. Joseph, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair agrees, and we have gotten through all the items. Congratulations, everyone. Great job. And congratulations. Whole system working well. And I think it went off pretty good for the first one, you know?
I think y'all are fantastic. Thank you so much. I don't mince words. I really mean it. Thank you so much.
Special thanks to Christopher, who kept us going here.
Thank you.
And let us know as soon as you have any clarity on that special meeting for us. Thank you.
We will do our best. Worst case scenario, it's our business meeting.
I'm just so mad we can't go out and look at the building like we had planned to for the special meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I at least feel good that we were, Connie, Clyde, and I got out there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I